Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about Victorian factory workers, specifically what it was really like to work in those massive cotton mills in northern England. And trust me, you're going to be real grateful for that soft bed you're lying on by the time we're done. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. All right, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath, and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're heading back to 1840-something England, and honestly, you're gonna need that comfort, so congratulations. You just woke up in northern England. The year is 1845, and you're about to start your new job at Quarry Bank Cotton Mill in Cheshire. Now here's the good news. You've got work. In a world where unemployment means starvation, that's actually huge. The bad news? Well, let's just say your alarm clock is going to be a steam whistle at 5 in the morning, and your commute is going to be a bit different than you're used to. It's still dark outside when that whistle cuts through the pre-dawn air like a knife, sharp, piercing, impossible to ignore. Your eyes snap open in the cramped room you share with, well, pretty much your entire family. The walls are thin, the ceiling is low, and you can hear your neighbours stirring too. Because when the mill calls, everyone answers. You roll off the thin straw mattress that's seen better days, probably several years' worth of better days. The floor beneath your bare feet is cold, rough wooden planks that creak with every step. No carpets here, no cozy warmth, just the basics, the absolute basics. Your clothes are hanging on a nail by the small window, the same clothes you've worn for the past week. In 1845, most working folks owned maybe 2 sets of clothing if they were lucky, one to wear, one to wash. And washing happened, well, when you had time, which wasn't often. The walk to the mill takes about 40 minutes in good weather. Today, it's not good weather. A light rain is falling, that persistent English drizzle that seems to seep into your bones. Your shoes, if you can call them that, are more leather scraps than actual footwear. Each step sends cold water squishing between your toes. But you're not alone on this journey. The roads are filling up with shadows, dozens of people walking in the same direction, men, women, children as young as 8 or 9 years old, all of you moving like a slow river toward the same destination. Some folks are walking even farther than you, 3, 4 miles in all weather, because this job, this dangerous, exhausting, poorly paid job, is still better than starving. The mill comes into view as you crest a small hill, and honestly, it takes your breath away, not because it's beautiful, but because it's so massive. Quarry Bank stretches out in front of you like a red brick mountain, 4 stories tall, with window after window after window stretching across its face. 256 windows, to be exact, and when they're all lit up at night, which they often are, it looks like something from another world. But right now, in the grey dawn light, it just looks enormous and slightly terrifying. The building sits right next to the River Bollin, and you can hear the water rushing even from here. That river is what makes this whole operation possible. The massive water wheel that powers everything, all those spinning machines, all that cotton being turned into thread, it all depends on that flowing water. As you get closer, you can see the wheel itself. Well, part of it anyway. The thing is absolutely enormous. 44 tons of iron and wood, taller than most houses. They call it the Great Wheel, and it's one of the most impressive pieces of machinery in all of Britain. When it turns, the whole building seems to hum with energy. You join the stream of workers flowing through the main entrance. The overseer, a stern-looking man with a pocket watch, is checking people in. His eyes are sharp, calculating, making sure everyone's on time, because lateness means fines, and fines mean less money in your already nearly empty pocket. "First day?" he asks when you reach him. His voice is brisk, businesslike. You nod. "Mill hand?" "Yes, sir." "Name?" You tell him, and he makes a mark in his ledger. "You'll be working the spinning mules on the second floor. Report to William Faulkner. He's the mill manager. And listen." He leans in slightly, his voice dropping. "Don't be late again, ever. The machines wait for no one." Inside, the mill is like nothing you've ever experienced. The noise hits you first, a constant roar of machinery that makes your ears ring instantly. Hundreds of machines, all running at once, all clacking and whirring and spinning. It's so loud you can barely hear yourself think. Then there's the heat. Even this early in the morning, the air inside is warm and humid. The cotton thread needs specific conditions to work properly, and that means keeping the whole place steaming like a tropical greenhouse. By midday, it'll be close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit in here. The smell is next, a mix of cotton dust, machine oil, and human sweat. It's not necessarily unpleasant, just intense, industrial, like nothing from the natural world. But what really gets you is the size of it all. The main floor stretches out like a cathedral, with rows upon rows of machines. Each one is tended by workers who move with practiced efficiency, dodging between moving parts, feeding cotton into hungry mechanical mouths, collecting spools of finished thread. You climb the wooden stairs to the second floor, each step echoing despite the overwhelming machine noise. The overseer's instructions were clear: find William Faulkner, ask anyone, and they point you toward a tall man in a slightly better coat, standing near the largest machine you've ever seen. This must be the spinning mule. The thing is absolutely massive, stretching nearly the length of the entire floor. It looks like some kind of mechanical beast, all moving parts and spinning wheels. At the back, there are rows of what look like small metal posts, each one holding white fluffy cotton. At the front, hundreds of thin threads are being wound onto wooden bobbins. And between the back and front, there's a massive carriage, probably 20 feet long, that's slowly moving forward. As it moves, the cotton gets stretched thinner and thinner until it becomes proper thread. Then the carriage reverses, winding all that new thread onto the bobbins at the front. "You, the new hand," William Faulkner's voice cuts through the noise. He's a middle-aged man with shrewd eyes and hands stained permanently with cotton dust. When you nod, he gestures toward the machine. "Ever worked a mule before?" "No, sir." "Thought not. Well, you're about to learn." He walks you along the side of the machine, pointing out different parts. "This here's a spinning mule. Finest piece of machinery in the world, takes raw cotton, turns it into thread strong enough for both the warp and the weft of cloth. Before, machines like this, you'd need wool or linen for the strong threads. Now, cotton can do it all." He shows you how the carriage works, moving slowly away from the back of the machine, drawing out the cotton fibers until they're thin as spider silk. When it gets out to the end there, the cotton's the right thickness, but it's not strong yet. That's where these spindles come in. He points to hundreds of thin metal rods. They twist the fibers, give them strength, turn that fluffy cotton into proper thread. You watch, mesmerized, as the whole process unfolds. The carriage rolls out, the cotton stretches, the spindles spin, and somehow, magically, thread appears. Once the carriage reaches the end, it reverses, and while it's coming back, it's winding all that new thread onto these bobbins here. He taps one of the wooden spools at the front of the machine. When the bobbins are full, they get taken off and fresh ones go on. That's called doffing. How long does each cycle take? Depends on the length of thread we're making, maybe 10, 15 minutes. The key thing is, the machine can't stop. Every minute it's not running is money lost, and in this business, time really is money. He leads you to a section of the machine where a young man, probably not much older than you, is walking back and forth along the threads. This here's a piecer, Faulkner explains. When threads break, and they do break, his job is to tie them back together quick as lightning. Can't let broken threads sit there, ruins the whole batch. The piecer looks up and nods, but doesn't stop moving. His hands are incredibly fast, finding broken threads, tying them together, moving on to the next one. It's like watching a dancer, if dancers worked with deadly machinery. You'll start as a piecer, Faulkner continues. Learn the machine, learn how the thread behaves. If you're good, if you're fast, maybe someday you'll become a mule spinner. That's the highest paid job in the mill. What does a mule spinner do? Runs the whole machine, sets the timing, adjusts the tension, makes sure everything works smoothly. A good mule spinner can make up to 30 shillings a week. Bad one. He shrugs. Well, bad ones don't last long. 30 shillings. That's more money than most farm workers see in a month. No wonder people are willing to come here, to endure the noise and heat and danger. It's a chance, maybe the only chance, to make a decent living. Faulkner introduces you to Tom, the piecer you'll be working alongside. Tom's been here 3 years, started when he was 12. His hands are stained with cotton dust, and there's a small scar on his right palm from where he moved too close to a moving belt, but his eyes are alert, friendly. Your first rule, Tom says, his voice barely audible over the machine noise. Never put your hand where you can't see it. These machines will take a finger faster than you can blink. Second rule, when that carriage comes back, get out of the way. It's heavy, and it doesn't stop for anything. He shows you how to spot a broken thread, how to tie the special knot that keeps everything flowing smoothly. Speed matters, he explains, but accuracy matters more. Bad knot, whole section of thread is ruined. Your first few hours are challenging. The noise makes it hard to concentrate, the heat makes you dizzy, and the sheer complexity of keeping track of hundreds of threads at once is overwhelming. But gradually, very gradually, you start to get the rhythm. Walk along the threads, eyes scanning constantly for breaks. When you spot one, move fast but carefully. Tie the knot, test it gently, move on. Don't think about the noise, don't think about the heat. Just focus on the threads. The carriage starts moving back, and Tom grabs your arm. Move! You both step quickly to the side as 20 feet of heavy machinery rolls past. There's maybe 3 feet of clearance, just enough room to avoid being crushed. Children work under there sometimes, Tom says quietly, nodding toward the gap beneath the moving carriage. Cleaning up cotton scraps, clearing out lint, dangerous work, but someone has to do it. You glance under the machine and see them, kids who can't be more than 8 or 9 years old, crawling around beneath tons of moving metal. They have to be quick, have to stay low, have to get out of the way when that carriage comes rolling back. One mistake, one moment of inattention, and they'd be crushed instantly. But they seem almost casual about it, like this is just normal, which you're starting to realize it is. This is normal here. This is just life. The morning passes in a blur of motion and noise. Your hands are getting faster. Your eyes are learning what to look for. Tom nods approvingly when you catch a particularly tricky break before it causes problems. Getting the hang of it, he says during a brief moment when the machine pauses for maintenance. Most people take weeks to get comfortable with the mule. You might actually have a talent for this. A talent for factory work. 3 months ago, that would have sounded like an insult. Now, it feels like hope because having a talent, being good at something, means job security, and job security means survival. The noon whistle blows, and the machines gradually wind down to a stop. The sudden relative quiet is almost startling, though your ears are still ringing from hours of noise. Around you, workers are pulling out small bundles of food, settling down wherever they can find space. Tom unwraps a piece of bread with a thin scraping of bacon fat on it. You've got similar, though yours is just bread with a tiny bit of cheese. Luxury food, by the standards of 1845. Good first morning, Tom says between bites. Afternoon's going to be tougher though. Heat builds up and everyone gets tired. That's when accidents happen. You look around at your fellow workers, really look at them for the first time. They're a mix of ages, from children barely tall enough to reach the machines to older men and women with decades of experience written in their faces, but they all share something, a kind of alert wariness. Eyes that are always watching the machinery, hands that instinctively know where the dangerous spots are. This is your world now. These people, these machines, this constant dance between human reflexes and mechanical precision. It's not the life you imagined, but it's the life you've got. And as the afternoon whistle blows and the machines roar back to life, you realize something. You're going to survive this. You're going to learn, adapt, become one of those alert workers with quick hands and careful eyes. The spinning mule starts its next cycle, the carriage rolling out, cotton stretching into thread, and you walk alongside it, watching for breaks, ready to tie the knots that keep it all working, ready to become a Victorian factory worker. Welcome to Quarrybank Mill. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. Welcome to your new life. Your second week at the mill starts to reveal the real rhythm of this place. 5:30 in the morning. That steam whistle pierces through your dreams like clockwork. But now, instead of jumping in panic, your body just automatically starts moving. Feet hitting the floor, clothes pulled on, out the door. You're learning that time here isn't just important, it's everything. The mill runs on something called factory time, and it's different from anything people had experienced before. For centuries, folks worked by daylight, by seasons, by the natural rhythm of the world. Not anymore. Now there's a massive clock on the outside of the mill building, 4 faces, one pointing in each direction, so nobody can claim they couldn't see what time it was. That clock controls everything. When you eat, when you work, when you sleep. And the rumour going around is that some mill owners, the really unscrupulous ones, actually mess with the clocks, slow them down during the day to squeeze more work out of people, speed them up at night to make the shifts longer. Whether that's true here at Quarrybank, well, you're not about to ask. Tom's been teaching you the finer points of piecing, and honestly, it's more complicated than you expected. Different types of cotton require different knots. The thickness of the thread changes how tight you tie things. And then there's reading the machine itself, learning to hear when something's not quite right. Listen, Tom says during a brief break while they oil the machinery. The noise level drops just enough for normal conversation. You hear that slight squeak on the third spindle bank, means the bearing's getting dry, probably get fixed tonight, but if it doesn't, the whole section's going to jam up by tomorrow afternoon. You tilt your head, trying to pick out one small sound among hundreds, and amazingly, there it is, a tiny irregularity in the mechanical symphony. How long did it take you to learn to hear things like that? Oh, maybe 6 months before I could really tell what the machine was saying. But once you get it, it's like the mule talks to you, tells you what it needs, warns you when trouble's coming. The payment system here is, well, it's both encouraging and terrifying. You get paid based on results. More cycles the machine completes, more money in your pocket, but that also means every breakdown, every jam, every minute the mule sits idle costs you directly. As a piecer, you make about 5 shillings a week when things go well. That's decent. A farm labourer might make 7 or 8 shillings, but they only get paid when there's work, and if the harvest fails, well, they get nothing. Here, as long as the mill keeps running, you get paid every Saturday. The mule spinners, the guys who actually operate the machines, they can make much more. Tom points out Jack Morrison, a lean man in his 30s who's been running mules for over a decade. Jack pulls down maybe 25 shillings a good week. Bad week. When the cotton's poor quality or the machine breaks down a lot, maybe 15. 25 shillings. That's real money. Enough to rent a decent room, buy proper food, maybe even save a little for the future. No wonder people fight for those positions. But here's the thing that really gets you. Children make up nearly half the workforce, not teenagers like Tom, actual little kids. Sarah, who can't be more than 7, spends her days crawling under the mules collecting cotton waste. Her small size lets her get into spaces adults couldn't reach, but it also puts her right underneath tons of moving machinery. She makes maybe 2 shillings a week, if she's lucky. Most of it goes straight to her family, because without that money, they'd all starve. It's not cruelty, exactly. It's survival. But watching her dart between those massive moving parts, knowing that one slip means death, it makes your stomach clench. The mill provides housing for workers who need it, and you're grateful for that, even if the conditions are basic. You're sharing a room in one of the mill houses with 3 other men. The building is brick, which is better than the wood and mud cottages many workers grew up in. But it's crowded. Your room is maybe 10 feet by 12 feet, 4 narrow beds, each with a straw mattress and a thin blanket, a small table, 2 chairs, and pegs on the wall for hanging clothes. That's it. No privacy, no space to spread out, barely enough room to move around. But it's warm. The mill houses are built close together, and body heat from your neighbours helps keep the worst of the cold at bay. In winter, when the countryside is brutal, these cramped quarters start to feel almost cosy. The food situation is manageable. Not great, but manageable. The mill provides meals for the apprentice children, the ones whose families gave them up to work here. But for regular workers like you, you're on your own. Your weekly food budget is roughly 2 shillings, which sounds like a lot until you start shopping. Bread is your foundation, thick, dense oat cakes that fill your stomach and give you energy for the long shifts. A good-sized loaf costs about 4p, and you go through 3 or 4 loaves a week. On Sundays, if you've had a good week, you might buy a small piece of bacon. Not much, maybe 2 ounces, but enough to add some fat and flavour to your meals. Cheese is a luxury, maybe an ounce on Saturday night if the week went well. And tea, real tea, that's for special occasions only. Most days, breakfast is oat cake with water or, if you're lucky, a bit of milk. The mill children get something called blue milk, which is basically water with just enough milk added to change the colour. The joke goes that it's so watery you can read a newspaper through it. But honestly, even that sounds good when you're hungry. Lunch happens right at your machine. No cafeteria, no break room, just wherever you can find a spot to sit. The problem is, everything gets covered in cotton dust. Your bread, your cheese, whatever you've brought, it all gets a fine coating of white fuzz. You learn to brush it off as best you can and eat anyway. The taste takes getting used to. Cotton dust has this slightly sweet, almost metallic flavour. After a few weeks, you barely notice it. After a few months, food without that dust coating starts to taste strange. Dinner, eaten after the 14-hour shift ends, is usually oatcake again, maybe with a bit of bacon fat spread on it if you've been able to save some. On really good days, you might have a small piece of cheese, and always you're hungry, not starving. The mill children have it worse. The apprentices, the ones bound by contract until they turn 21, they get fed by the mill, and the mill feeds them as cheaply as possible. Breakfast and supper are the same thing, thin oatcake soaked in hot water and milk. Dinner is usually potato pie with tiny scraps of bacon mixed in, so fatty most adults would struggle to eat it. But when you're 8 years old and working 14 hours a day, you'll eat anything. The daily routine becomes automatic after a few weeks. Up at 5:30, quick wash in cold water, dress, walk to the mill. Work starts at 6 sharp. No exceptions. The first break comes at 8. 15 minutes to grab some bread and maybe use the privy. Then it's straight through until noon. 4 hours of constant motion, watching threads, tying knots, staying alert. By 11, your feet are aching and your back is starting to complain. By noon, you're genuinely grateful for that 40-minute dinner break. Afternoon shift runs from 12:40 until 8 at night. Those last few hours, 6 to 8, are brutal. Everyone's tired, attention starts to wander, and that's when accidents happen. You've learned to be extra careful during evening hours, because tired people make mistakes around dangerous machinery. The noise never stops being overwhelming, but you do adapt to it. After a month, you can hold conversations while the machines are running, reading lips and using hand signals to communicate. Some of the workers have developed their own sign language, quick gestures that let them share information without stopping work. The heat is harder to get used to. Even in winter, the mill stays warm from all the machinery and the humid air needed for cotton processing. In summer, it becomes almost unbearable. Women faint regularly, and the overseers keep buckets of cold water on hand to revive anyone who collapses. But you're getting stronger. Those first weeks, your legs ached constantly from standing all day, your hands cramped from the repetitive motions, your shoulders burned from reaching up to the higher threads. Now, your body has adapted. You can work a full shift without the acute physical pain. What you haven't adapted to is the fear, not panic, but a constant low-level awareness that everything around you is dangerous. The belts that transfer power from the water wheel could catch loose clothing and drag you into the machinery. The moving carriages of the mules could crush you if you're not paying attention. Even something as simple as cleaning cotton waste from under the machines that puts you inches from death. Every worker has stories. Old Joe lost 2 fingers to a carding machine 5 years ago. Mary Thompson got her hair caught in a drive belt and nearly lost her scalp. Young Peter, who started here the same week you did, he slipped while cleaning under a mule and the carriage caught his leg. Broke it in 3 places. He's walking again now, but with a permanent limp. The mill owners, the Gregg family, they're not monsters. they provide housing, they pay regularly, they don't use the worst punishments you hear about at other mills, but they're also businessmen. Safety measures cost money, and money spent on safety is money not earned as profit. So you learn to be your own safety measure. Never reach where you can't see. Always know where the moving parts are. When in doubt, stop and think. Better to lose a few seconds than lose a finger. The social side of mill work is complicated. You're all in this together, sharing the dangers and hardships, but you're also competing for the better positions, for the approval of the overseers, for the slightly higher wages that mean the difference between bare survival and something approaching comfort. Tom's become a real friend, teaching you not just the technical aspects of the work, but how to navigate the mill's social hierarchy, who to ask for help, who to avoid, which overseers are fair, and which ones look for excuses to dock your pay. Stay clear of Smithers, he warns, nodding toward a heavy-set man with a permanent scowl. He's got quotas for fines, has to collect a certain amount each week from worker penalties. If he hasn't made his numbers by Friday, he starts looking for trouble. The fine system is probably the most hated aspect of mill life. Talking while working, that's a penny fine. Looking out the window, another penny. Being late, even by 2 minutes, costs you 3p. Open a window without permission, that's 6p. For the child apprentices who don't get wages, fines mean extra work hours. Sometimes they're kept until 10 or 11 at night, working off penalties for infractions as minor as yawning or whistling. But there are small pleasures too. Saturday nights, when the week's wages are paid, there's often singing in the mill houses. Someone will pull out a fiddle or an accordion, and for an hour or two, the exhaustion and fear fade away. Workers share stories, jokes, sometimes even dance a little. Sunday is the closest thing to freedom you get. The mill shuts down, the machines fall silent, and for one blessed day you can step outside without hearing that constant mechanical roar. Some people go to church, others just sleep. You usually spend Sunday morning mending clothes, washing what you can, trying to prepare for another week. Sunday afternoons, if the weather's decent, you might walk out to the countryside just to see growing things, to hear birds instead of machinery, to remember that the world exists beyond these brick walls and spinning cotton. The Gregg family lives in a mansion on the hill overlooking the mill. Sometimes, on Sunday walks, you can see lights in their windows, warm yellow glows that suggest comfortable rooms, good food, books and music, and all the things that money can buy. It's not resentment you feel exactly. More like wonder. How different life must be when you own the machines instead of serving them. But Monday always comes. The whistle always blows, and you always get up, get dressed, and walk back through those mill gates, because this is your life now. This is how you survive, one day at a time, one shift at a time, one carefully tied knot at a time. The cotton keeps coming, the machines keep spinning, and you keep working, learning to find small moments of satisfaction in doing the job well, small pleasures in friendship and shared struggle, small hopes that maybe, someday, things might get a little better. For now, it's enough to make it through each day, to earn your 5 shillings, to keep your fingers and your life, to prove that you can adapt to this strange new world of steam and cotton and mechanical precision. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, the whistle, the walk, the endless dance with dangerous machinery. But tonight you can rest. Let your aching muscles relax. Let the noise fade from your ears. Let yourself imagine, just for a moment, what it might feel like to wake up without that whistle, just for a moment before sleep takes you and you dream of spinning wheels and moving carriages and threads that never, ever break. 3 months into your mill life, and you're starting to understand what people mean when they talk about the real cost of this work. It's not just the long hours or the poor pay, it's what the job does to your body, your mind, your very soul. The accidents are what get your attention first, not because they're dramatic, but because they're so ordinary, matter of fact, part of the daily rhythm of mill life. Last Tuesday, William Bower was working the carding machines. Now, carding is where raw cotton gets combed and aligned before it goes to the spinning mules. Dangerous work because those machines have hundreds of tiny wire teeth that grab and pull at anything they touch. The safe way to feed new cotton into a carding engine is with a long stick, keeping your hands well clear of those hungry teeth. But William had done this job for 8 years. He knew those machines, had fed them thousands of times. Maybe he was tired, maybe distracted, maybe just unlucky. Instead of using the stick, he tried to push a new batch of cotton in with his fingers. The machine caught his left hand and pulled it right into the works. By the time they got the power shut off and the machinery stopped, William had lost everything below his elbow, just gone. The carding engine had chewed through bone and muscle like it was cotton fibre. He's alive, which is something, but his working days are over. 8 years of experience, gone. A lifetime of wages, gone. The mill gave his family £2 and wished them well. £2 for an arm. William's not unique. In the records they keep here at Quarry Bank, there are 4 deaths on file, 3 adults and 1 child. The child, that stays with you. John Fulton, 11 years old, working as a scavenger under the spinning mules. His job was crawling around beneath those massive carriages, picking up loose cotton and bits of broken thread. Nobody knows exactly what happened. Maybe he didn't hear the mule starting up. Maybe he got confused about which direction the carriage was moving. Maybe he just moved a split second too slow. But when that 20-foot iron carriage came rolling back, John was underneath it. They say it was quick. Small mercy, I suppose. The thing that haunts you isn't just that it happened, but how everyone reacted. Work stopped for maybe 10 minutes while they cleaned up. Then the machine started again because cotton waits for no one, not even dead children. John's parents got 5 shillings for the funeral. The mill management sent a brief letter expressing their regret, and the next day another child took John's place under the mules, because that cotton waste still needed collecting, and small hands were still the best tool for the job. You start to understand why people look the way they do after years in the mills. It's not just the physical exhaustion, though that's real enough. It's carrying the weight of knowing that any day, any moment might be your last. That constant tension, that perpetual alertness, it wears on you. The children handle it differently than adults. They adapt, maybe because they don't fully understand the danger, or maybe because they're more resilient than grown-ups. But watching them work, seeing how casually they duck under moving machinery, or stick their small hands into gaps that would terrify you, it's both impressive and heartbreaking. Sarah, the 7-year-old you noticed on your first day, she's become something of a legend among the scavengers. Fastest hands in the mill, can clear cotton waste from under a mule carriage in half the time it takes other children. The overseers praise her, give her extra bread sometimes as a reward. But you've noticed she doesn't hear well anymore. 3 years of working near those thunderous machines have damaged her ears. She reads lips better than most adults, has learned to feel machine vibrations through the floor to know when carriages are moving. It's remarkable adaptation. But it's also tragic. She's 7 years old and already partially deaf. The punishments for breaking rules, Well, they vary depending on which overseer catches you. Some are relatively mild, docking a few pence from your wages, making you work an extra hour. Others are creative. Young Timothy got caught talking during work hours last week. His punishment was wearing an iron weight around his neck for the rest of the shift. Must have weighed 10 pounds. And by evening his shoulders were screaming. But he didn't talk again. The water treatment is reserved for children who fall asleep on the job, and honestly, it's hard to blame them for dozing off. 14-hour shifts when you're 8 years old, standing in heat and humidity that would exhaust a grown man. Of course they get drowsy. But falling asleep near machinery can be fatal, so the overseers have developed a system. There's a large wooden tub in the corner of each floor, filled with cold water. When a child is caught nodding off, they get grabbed by the legs, dunked headfirst into the tub, then sent back to work dripping wet. The shock of cold water definitely wakes them up, but it's also humiliating, and in winter, potentially dangerous. Wet clothes in a cold mill can lead to pneumonia. Still, the policy continues because a sick child is considered less risky than a sleepy one around dangerous machines. The worst punishment you've heard of, though thankfully you haven't seen it yourself, involves nailing. A boy at another mill, caught repeatedly looking out the window instead of watching his machine, had his ear nailed to a wooden table for several hours, left there as an example to others. The really insidious thing about the punishment system is how it creates fear even when nothing's happening. You find yourself constantly looking over your shoulder, watching for overseers, second-guessing every movement. It's exhausting living under that kind of scrutiny. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect of mill work isn't the dramatic accidents or harsh punishments. It's the slow, invisible damage that accumulates over time. The cotton dust is everywhere, in the air, on every surface, in your lungs with every breath. At first, it just makes you cough a little. Everyone coughs in the mills. It's as normal as the machine noise, but after months of breathing that air, the cough gets worse. They call it mill fever, or sometimes cotton lung. The medical term, though most workers don't know it, is bicyanosis. Your lungs gradually fill with cotton fibers and dust, making it harder and harder to breathe. Old-timers wheeze constantly, can barely climb stairs without stopping to rest. There's no cure, no treatment, you just slowly suffocate. Most workers with advanced cotton lung don't make it past their 40s. They spend their final years gasping for air, coughing up blood-tinged phlegm, unable to work, unable to earn money, slowly starving while their lungs fail. The irony is bitter. You come to the mills to escape rural poverty, to make a better life, and end up trading a quick death from starvation for a slow death from suffocation. The noise damage is almost as universal as the lung problems. After your first month, you noticed your hearing wasn't quite as sharp. After 3 months, you have to ask people to repeat themselves sometimes. Long-term workers, the ones who've been here 5 or 10 years, many of them are significantly deaf. But in some ways, the hearing loss becomes an advantage. The constant machine noise that nearly drove you insane during your first weeks, now it's just background. You barely notice it anymore, which means you can focus on your work, can actually think while your hands go through the practiced motions of piecing threads. The heat affects different people differently. Some workers seem to thrive in the humid warmth, especially those who came from cold, damp rural cottages, but others, particularly the women, struggle with the tropical conditions inside the mill. Mary Hutchinson collapsed last Thursday, just crumpled to the floor next to her machine. The overseers carried her to a cooler area, poured water on her face, got her conscious again, but she was shaky for the rest of the day, pale and dizzy. It's the 3rd time this month someone's fainted from the heat. The mill keeps the temperature high because cotton thread needs humidity to stay flexible. Dry air makes the fibers brittle, causes more breaks, reduces productivity, so the windows stay closed, the steam keeps pumping, and the workers just have to endure. Your own body is changing in ways you didn't expect. Your hands, once soft and clean, are now permanently stained with cotton oil and machine grease. No amount of scrubbing gets them completely clean. The constant handling of rough thread has left calluses on your fingertips. And small cuts that never quite heal. Your posture is different too. Months of bending over machinery, reaching up to high threads, hunching to avoid low-hanging belts. It's left you with a slight stoop. You catch yourself in reflective windows sometimes and barely recognize the person looking back. But perhaps the strangest change is how you think about time. Before the mill, time was fluid. You worked when there was work to do, rested when you were tired, ate when you were hungry. Now, every moment is measured, scheduled, accounted for. You wake up thinking about how many minutes until the work whistle. You count thread cycles during the day, calculating how much you'll earn if the machine keeps running smoothly. You fall asleep wondering if tomorrow will bring accidents, breakdowns, fines that eat into your wages. The Factory Act of 1833 was supposed to improve conditions for workers like you. No children under 9, no more than 12 hours a day for children under 16, mandatory schooling for the youngest workers. It sounded good on paper. But enforcement is spotty. The factory inspectors visit maybe twice a year, and the mill always seems to know they're coming. Suddenly, the youngest children disappear for a few days. The work hours get adjusted temporarily. Everyone's told to look alert and well-fed. Once the inspectors leave, things go back to normal because the mill owners know, and the workers know, and probably the inspectors know that these factories couldn't operate under the strict letter of the law. There's too much money involved, too many people dependent on these jobs, too much pressure to keep costs low and production high. So you work in this strange space between legal and illegal, moral and immoral, necessary and unconscionable, because what choice do you have? Go back to rural poverty, try to find work that doesn't exist, let your family starve while you maintain your principles? The mill provides income, harsh and dangerous income, but income nonetheless. And in 1845, income means survival. You've learned to find small ways to protect yourself. Breathing through a damp cloth helps filter some of the cotton dust. Taking quick breaks to step outside, even for 30 seconds, gives your lungs a brief respite. Learning which machines are most likely to break down helps you avoid being nearby when they fail catastrophically. You've also learned to read the subtle signs that predict accidents. Workers who are overly tired make mistakes. Machines that sound slightly different than usual are about to break. Children who seem distracted or upset are more likely to get hurt. Sometimes you can prevent disasters. A quiet word to a drowsy child. Hey, wake up. A quick signal to an experienced worker. Something's wrong with number 3 mule. It's not much, but it's what you can do. The solidarity among workers is real, born from shared danger and hardship. When someone gets hurt, others cover their work without being asked. When a family loses their breadwinner to an accident, neighbors share what little food they have. When the overseers are being particularly harsh, workers look out for each other. But there's also competition, resentment, fear, because any one of you could be replaced tomorrow. There are always people desperate enough to take these jobs, willing to work for even less, to endure even worse conditions. So you help when you can, but you don't take unnecessary risks. You're sympathetic to others' suffering, but you protect yourself first. It sounds selfish, But in this environment, selfishness is survival. The long-term workers, the ones who've survived 5 or 10 years, they have a particular look in their eyes, not defeat exactly, more like acceptance. They've made peace with the danger, with the gradual destruction of their bodies, with the certainty that this work will eventually kill them. But they've also found meaning in small things, pride in doing difficult work well, satisfaction in earning enough to feed their families, camaraderie with fellow survivors. It's not the life they dreamed of, but it's the life they've built. And sometimes, late at night, when the machines are finally quiet, you can almost convince yourself that it's enough, that surviving another day in this place is itself an achievement, that adapting to impossible conditions shows a kind of strength. Tomorrow will bring new dangers, new challenges, new opportunities for things to go catastrophically wrong. But tonight, you're alive. Your fingers are intact. Your lungs still work, mostly. Your hearing is damaged, but not gone. Tonight, you can rest your aching body. Let your mind drift away from the mechanical precision of mill work. Remember what it feels like to be human instead of just another moving part in a vast, dangerous, profitable machine. The cotton will be there tomorrow, the machines will start again, the dangers will remain, but for now, in this brief space between shifts, you can simply breathe, carefully, shallowly, but still breathing, still alive in the age of steam and cotton and industrial progress. Still human, despite everything trying to grind that humanity away. 6 months at Quarry Bank, and you're starting to understand something most outsiders never grasp. This isn't just a workplace, it's a complete world, a society with its own rules, its own culture, its own strange rhythms of hope and despair. The mill houses create their own little villages. Families who've never met before suddenly find themselves living inches apart, sharing walls so thin you can hear your neighbours' conversations, their arguments, their children crying in the night. Privacy becomes a luxury nobody can afford. But community develops in unexpected ways. Mrs. Henderson, who lives in the room next to yours, she's got 6 children and a husband who lost his hand to a carding machine 2 years ago. Without his wages, the family would starve, so the neighbours, all mill workers earning barely enough for themselves, somehow find ways to help. Maybe it's an extra piece of bread when someone's had a good week. Maybe it's watching the youngest children while Mrs. Henderson works a double shift. Maybe it's just listening, being there when the weight of it all becomes too much to bear alone. Tom's family situation is complicated in ways that are becoming depressingly common. His father died in a mill accident when Tom was 10, crushed by a falling beam during repairs to the water wheel. His mother remarried, but her new husband drinks, not socially, not occasionally, but much so shows, but seriously, dangerously. Half my wages go straight to his gin habit, Tom tells you during one of your Sunday walks. Mum tries to hide money, but he always finds it. Last week he sold our good cooking pot to buy more drink. Now we're boiling everything in an old tin can. The drinking problem is epidemic among mill workers, and honestly, you're starting to understand why. 14 hours a day of dangerous, mind-numbing work, constant fear of injury or unemployment, living conditions that barely qualify as human. Gin offers temporary escape from all of it. But temporary escape creates permanent problems. Families where the breadwinner drinks, children going hungry because wages disappear into taverns, accidents happening because workers show up drunk or hungover. It's a cycle that destroys lives just as efficiently as the machinery. The children in the mill families, they grow up fast. too fast. 8-year-old Annie Morrison, who works as a doffer changing bobbins on the spinning frames. She handles money better than some adults you've known. Has to. Her wages are often the difference between her family eating or starving. I get 3 shillings on a good week, she tells you with the matter-of-fact tone children use for terrible things. Mum takes 2 for rent and food. I keep 6pence for myself, but usually end up spending it on bread when we run short toward week's end. 3 shillings a week. For a child who should be playing, learning to read, discovering the world. Instead, she's calculating thread counts and dodging machinery, already planning how to stretch her wages to keep her family alive. But there are bright spots too, moments of genuine joy that feel almost miraculous in this harsh environment. Saturday evening, after wages are paid, the mill houses come alive with music and laughter. Someone always has a fiddle or a squeeze box, and suddenly the cramped rooms fill with dancing. The music is folk tunes mostly, songs passed down from rural grandparents, melodies that remember green fields and harvest festivals, but mill workers have started creating their own songs too. Ballads about factory life, humorous ditties about difficult overseers, haunting melodies about friends lost to accidents. There's one song that always gets everyone singing, a tune called The Cotton Mill Morning. The lyrics are simple, almost childlike, but they capture something essential about mill life. The whistle blows at 5:30, time to rise and face the day. The machines are calling loudly. There's no time to look away. But we'll stand together working till the evening sets us free. In the cotton mill this morning, we're as strong as we can be. It's not great poetry, but when 40 voices join in, when children and adults and old-timers all sing together, there's something powerful about it, a reminder that you're not alone in this, that shared struggle creates its own kind of strength. The romantic relationships in mill communities are complicated. Young people work side by side for 14 hours a day, sharing dangers and hardships, developing bonds that might bloom into love under different circumstances. But mill life makes everything harder. Mary Booth and James Crawford have been sweet on each other for months, but they can't afford to marry. Marriage means setting up their own household, renting their own room, buying their own furniture and cooking equipment. On their combined wages of maybe 12 shillings a week, it's just not possible. So they wait, caught in stolen moments during meal breaks, walk together on Sunday afternoons, dream of a future that always seems just out of reach. Many mill couples wait years to marry, saving every possible penny, hoping for promotions that might make a family financially viable. And when they do marry, when they do start families, the cycle continues. Their children will grow up in mill houses, start working at 8 or 9 years old, face the same dangers and hardships their parents endured. It's a kind of inheritance passed down through generations, poverty and peril and the endless rhythm of industrial labour. The seasonal changes affect mill life in ways you never expected. Winter is brutal, not just because of the cold, but because of the contrast. Outside temperatures drop well below freezing, while the mill interior stays tropically hot and humid. Workers develop constant colds, moving between extreme temperatures multiple times each day. The walk to work becomes treacherous when ice covers the roads. More than one worker has slipped and broken bones, missing weeks of wages during recovery. The mill provides no compensation for injuries that happen outside the workplace, so a simple fall can mean destitution. But winter also brings some advantages. The heat inside the mill becomes welcome instead of oppressive. The steam from the machines creates a fog that, while not healthy, at least feels warm and enveloping, and winter evenings in the mill houses, huddled together for warmth, create intimacy that summer's stifling heat makes impossible. Spring is renewal, but also anxiety. The water levels in the River Bollin affect how much power the wheel can generate, which affects how many machines can run, which affects how much work is available. A dry spring means reduced hours, lower wages, families choosing between rent and food, and summer brings its own miseries. The mill interior becomes almost unbearable, temperatures reaching over 90 degrees with humidity to match. Women faint regularly. Children become listless and sick. Everyone moves more slowly just to avoid generating additional body heat. But summer also means longer daylight hours, which allows for evening work by natural light instead of expensive gas lamps. It means fresh vegetables from small gardens behind the mill houses, tiny plots where workers grow cabbages and onions to supplement their meagre diets. The economic forces that drive your daily life are vast, global, almost incomprehensible in their scope. The cotton you process every day, the raw material that feeds these hungry machines, it comes from across the Atlantic Ocean, from plantations in America, where enslaved people pick the bowls under conditions that make mill work look comfortable. That connection between your labor and slave labor, it's not something the mill owners advertise, but it's real. The Gregg family fortune, the mansion on the hill, the profits that make Quarry Bank possible, they're built on a foundation of human bondage thousands of miles away. Samuel Gregg himself inherited a sugar plantation on the island of Dominica. The enslaved workers there produced sugar, while the enslaved workers in America produced cotton, while you and your fellow mill hands produced cloth, all links in the same chain, all serving the same system of profit extraction. The irony is bitter. You work in dangerous conditions for poverty wages, processing cotton picked by people in even worse conditions for no wages at all. The finished cloth, the shirts and dresses and household linens you help create, many of them will be shipped back to slave plantations to clothe the very people who picked the cotton in the first place. It's a global economy built on exploitation, with you and the enslaved cotton pickers both serving the same masters, different forms of bondage, but bondage nonetheless. The Gregg family, when you glimpse them occasionally, seem like decent enough people. They provide housing for workers, they pay wages regularly, they don't use the most brutal punishments employed at other mills. But they're also businessmen, and business means profit, and profit means keeping costs low. Every safety improvement costs money, every wage increase reduces earnings, every hour of reduced work time means less cotton processed, so the Gregg family walks a careful line, providing just enough to keep workers alive and functional, but never so much that it seriously cuts into their returns. Robert Gregg, Samuel's son, actually opposed the 10-hour workday when Parliament was considering it, not because he was cruel, but because he genuinely believed shorter hours would harm workers financially. They'll earn less money, he argued, they'll suffer hardship and famine. From his perspective, it made sense. Shorter hours meant lower production meant lower wages meant hungry families. Better to work 14 hours and eat regularly than work 10 hours and starve. Of course, this logic ignored the possibility of paying higher hourly wages or accepting lower profits or recognizing that exhausted workers are less productive than rested ones. But those considerations would have required questioning the fundamental assumptions of the system. And successful businessmen don't usually question systems that make them wealthy. The mill's success is undeniable. Quarrybank has become one of the most profitable cotton operations in England. The Gregg family employs over 2,000 people across their various mills, processes millions of pounds of raw cotton each year, generates enormous wealth for themselves and modest prosperity for the surrounding region. But success measured how? If you count profits, yes. Quarrybank is tremendously successful. If you count the number of people employed, again, success. If you count technological innovation and industrial efficiency, absolutely successful. If you count human cost, well, that's a different calculation. The relationships between workers and management are complex, layered with mutual dependence and mutual resentment. The mill owners need workers, but they also need to control workers. Workers need jobs, but they also need to maintain some dignity, some sense of human worth. Small acts of rebellion become important. Talking when you're supposed to be silent, looking out a window when you should be watching machines, taking an extra minute during break time. These aren't dramatic protests, but they're assertions of humanity in a system designed to treat people as machine components. Sometimes rebellion takes more organized forms, work slowdowns when conditions become unbearable, collective refusal to work overtime when someone's been treated unfairly, whispered conversations about what other mills are paying, what other communities are doing to protect workers. But organized resistance is dangerous. Workers who cause trouble get blacklisted, their names shared among mill owners, their chances of finding other employment destroyed. In a world where unemployment means starvation, most workers can't afford to be troublemakers. So, resistance stays small, personal, individual. Each worker finding their own ways to maintain sanity and self-respect in an environment designed to crush both. The mill community has developed its own informal systems of support and justice. When someone is treated unfairly by an overseer, word spreads quickly. Not formal complaints, those would be suicidal, but quiet conversations, shared glances, subtle ways of expressing disapproval. When someone is genuinely in need, a family dealing with illness or injury, the community responds with whatever resources are available. A few extra pennies, a shared meal, childcare for working parents. It's not charity, exactly, more like mutual insurance against disaster. And when someone proves themselves untrustworthy, someone who informs on fellow workers or takes advantage of others' desperation, well, the mill community has ways of expressing disapproval too. Social isolation, exclusion from group activities, the cold shoulder that makes already difficult lives even more lonely. These informal systems matter because official systems, legal protections, government oversight, they're largely absent. Workers have few rights, little recourse when they're mistreated, no real voice in the conditions of their employment. So you create your own systems, your own codes of behavior, your own ways of protecting each other and punishing those who violate community standards. Sunday walks have become your weekly escape, your reminder that the world extends beyond mill walls and machine noise. The countryside around Quarrybank is beautiful, rolling hills and small farms and patches of forest that seem almost magical after 6 days of industrial landscape. But even these walks carry reminders of how much the world has changed. Fields that once supported farm families have been enclosed by wealthy landowners. Small cottages stand empty as people migrate to industrial towns. Traditional ways of life disappear as surely as morning mist. You pass groups of agricultural workers sometimes, and the contrast is striking. They look healthier than mill workers. Their posture is straighter. Their faces are weathered by sun instead of pale from indoor work, but they also look hungry, worried, uncertain about where their next meal will come from. The choice between mill work and farm work isn't really a choice between good and bad. It's a choice between different kinds of hardship, different forms of uncertainty, different ways of struggling to survive in a world that seems designed to make survival difficult for ordinary people. As evening approaches and you head back toward the mill houses, back toward another week of cotton and machinery and industrial precision, you carry with you these moments of peace, these brief glimpses of beauty and stillness. Tomorrow will bring the whistle, the walk, the endless dance with dangerous machines. But tonight you have these memories of green fields and quiet streams and skies unmarked by industrial smoke. Tonight you can rest, surrounded by the community you found in this unlikely place, supported by friendships forged in shared struggle, sustained by the small pleasures that make harsh lives bearable. The cotton waits in great bales, ready to be transformed into thread tomorrow. The machines stand silent, but ready to roar back to life. The whole vast mechanism of industrial production pauses, but never stops, never truly rests. But you can rest. For a few precious hours, you can simply be human instead of a factory worker, can dream instead of calculate, can remember instead of just endure. Tomorrow is coming, as it always does, but tonight is yours. 2 years at Quarry Bank now, and you're witnessing something remarkable. Change, slow, incremental, often frustrating change, but change nonetheless. The world of 1847 looks different from the world you entered in 1845. Not dramatically different, but if you know what to look for, if you've lived through the daily grind of mill life, you can sense the subtle shifts, the small improvements that might, eventually, add up to something larger. Parliament passed the 10 Hours Act just last month, limiting women and young people to no more than 10 hours of work per day, 10 hours instead of 14. It sounds modest, but for families like the Morrisons and the Hendersons, those 4 fewer hours mean the difference between exhaustion and recovery, between survival and something approaching life. The mill owners fought it. Of course, Robert Gregg himself travelled to London to argue against the legislation. Shorter hours mean lower wages, he told Parliament. Workers will suffer economic hardship, and there's truth in that argument. Reduced hours do mean less money in individual pockets, at least initially. But what the mill owners didn't anticipate, what perhaps they couldn't understand from their position of comfort and security, is how much more productive workers become when they're not half dead from fatigue. Rested hands work faster, alert minds make fewer mistakes, healthy bodies can sustain effort longer. The machines still run 14 hours a day, but now they're operated in shifts, fresh workers taking over from tired ones, maintaining quality and speed without grinding human beings into dust. It's revolutionary, literally, a fundamental change in how industrial work gets organized. The factory inspectors are becoming more serious too. More frequent visits, more thorough examinations, actual penalties for mills that violate the new regulations. Just last week, Inspector Leonard Horner spent 3 days at Quarry Bank talking to workers privately, examining machinery, reviewing wage records. For the first time, someone with real authority seemed genuinely interested in workers' experiences, not just productivity numbers or profit margins, but actual human welfare. It felt strange, almost unsettling, like discovering that someone in power actually cared whether you lived or died. The changes aren't just legal, they're social too. Education requirements for child workers mean that even the youngest mill hands now spend part of their week in school. Not much, just a few hours, but enough to learn basic reading and arithmetic. Enough to imagine futures beyond the factory floor. Young Sarah, now 9 years old and still working as a scavenger, can write her own name, can read simple sentences, can add and subtract numbers well enough to check whether her wages are calculated correctly. Small skills, but they represent something larger. Hope. Possibility. The radical notion that working-class children might deserve more than just labour. The Sunday schools are expanding too, offering not just religious instruction but practical education, geography lessons using maps of the world, arithmetic taught through real-world problems, even basic science, explaining how machines work and why cotton fibers behave the way they do. Tom has started attending these Sunday classes, and his enthusiasm is infectious. Did you know, he tells you excitedly after one session, that cotton comes from a plant that grows flowers, white flowers that turn into these fluffy bowls we work with every day? Never thought about where it actually came from before. It's a small revelation, but revelations matter. Understanding your place in the larger world, knowing that your daily labor connects to farmers in distant countries, to ships crossing oceans, to customers wearing the cloth you helped create, it transforms anonymous drudgery into meaningful work. The technological improvements continue as well. Steam power is gradually supplementing water power, meaning production can continue even when the river runs low. New machine designs reduce some of the most dangerous aspects of mill work. Better guards around moving parts, improved ventilation systems to reduce cotton dust. These improvements come slowly, often only after accidents force owners to recognize problems, but they do come. Each small safety measure, each minor design improvement represents lives saved, injuries prevented, suffering reduced. The economic changes are perhaps the most significant, though they're also the hardest to see day by day. Real wages, purchasing power adjusted for the cost of living, are gradually increasing, not dramatically, but measurably. A loaf of bread that cost 4 pence 2 years ago now costs 3 pence. Cheese is more available. Even occasional meat becomes possible for working families. The railroad has reached Quarry Bank, connecting the mill directly to Manchester and Liverpool. Suddenly, fresh food arrives daily instead of weekly. Vegetables that would have rotted during long wagon journeys now reach mill stores while still crisp. Fish from the coast, dairy products from distant farms, even exotic goods like oranges and tea become occasionally affordable. Your own life reflects these broader changes. You've been promoted to assistant mule spinner, earning nearly 15 shillings a week when production runs smoothly. It's still hard work, still dangerous, but the increased income makes a real difference. A room of your own instead of shared quarters. Better food, even a few books, purchased from travelling peddlers who've discovered that mill workers represent a new market for cheap literature. The books are simple, adventure stories and moral tales, but they open windows to worlds beyond cotton and machinery, stories of distant lands, heroic deeds, love and honour and justice. Reading by candlelight after 14-hour shifts becomes your private rebellion against the notion that working people don't deserve beauty, imagination, escape. The sense of community in the mill houses has deepened as well. Shared hardship creates bonds, but shared improvement creates something different: hope. The possibility that things might continue getting better, that children might have opportunities their parents never imagined. Mrs. Henderson's youngest daughter, little Catherine, she's 8 years old and shows remarkable aptitude for arithmetic. The Sunday school teacher thinks she might, with proper education, become a governess or even a school teacher herself. It's an extraordinary possibility that a mill worker's child might rise to middle-class respectability through education rather than marriage. Even the relationship between workers and management is evolving, not friendly exactly, but less purely adversarial. The Gregg family has started holding annual celebrations, providing food and entertainment for workers and their families. These events are partly paternalistic, partly calculated to improve worker loyalty, but they're also acknowledgements that workers are human beings with needs beyond wages. During the last Harvest Festival celebration, Robert Gregg actually spoke with individual workers, asking about their families, their concerns, their suggestions for improvements. Whether anything will come of these conversations remains to be seen, but the fact that they happened at all represents a significant shift. The broader political landscape is changing too. Working-class voices are being heard in ways that would have been impossible just a decade earlier. Chartist meetings in Manchester draw thousands of workers demanding voting rights, representation in Parliament, laws protecting labour interests. Not all mill workers support the Chartist movement, and many are too exhausted or frightened to participate in political activities, but the mere existence of organised working-class politics changes everything. Mill owners can no longer assume that workers will accept any conditions, any wages, any treatment without resistance. The global context is shifting as well. Anti-slavery movements are gaining strength, putting moral pressure on industries that depend on enslaved labour. The connection between mill prosperity and plantation slavery, once invisible or ignored, is becoming harder to deny. Some mill owners are beginning to source cotton from Egypt and India, places where workers are paid wages rather than held in bondage. The quality isn't always as good, the prices are sometimes higher, but the moral considerations are starting to influence business decisions. Samuel Gregg himself has begun divesting from slave-dependent enterprises, selling his plantation interests, investing instead in free labor agriculture. It's partly moral conviction, partly practical recognition that slavery's days are numbered, but it represents a fundamental change in how industrial capitalism thinks about labor. Your personal growth over these 2 years has been unexpected, not just the obvious changes, the increased wages, the better living conditions, the promotion to assistant spinner, but deeper transformations, ways of thinking and seeing that you never anticipated. You understand machinery now in ways that go beyond simple operation. You can hear a spinning mule's entire mechanical state in subtle changes to its rhythm. You can predict failures hours before they happen, adjust tension and timing to prevent problems rather than just react to them. This knowledge, this intimate understanding of industrial processes, it's a kind of expertise that didn't exist in the world before. Your grandfather might have known every tree in his forest, every bird call, every sign of changing weather. You know every sound a cotton mill makes, every vibration that signals trouble, every adjustment needed to maintain smooth production. It's different knowledge, suited to a different world, but it's real expertise nonetheless, valuable, marketable, something that gives you dignity and purpose in an industrial economy. The social relationships you've developed, the friendships forged in shared danger and mutual support, they're unlike anything your rural ancestors would have experienced. Village communities were based on blood, land, tradition. Mill communities are based on choice, necessity, the voluntary cooperation of strangers who've learned to trust each other. Tom has become like a brother, not through family connection, but through countless shared experiences. Mrs. Henderson is like a mother, offering advice and comfort when mill life becomes overwhelming. Little Sarah is like a younger sister, someone to protect and encourage. These relationships, built on industrial foundations rather than agricultural ones, they represent something new in human experience. Urban families, industrial communities, modern forms of kinship based on common struggle rather than common ancestry. Your understanding of time has been permanently altered too. Not just the mechanical precision of factory time, though that's part of it, but deeper changes in how you think about past, present, and future. Rural time moved in cycles, planting and harvest, seasons and generations, patterns that repeated endlessly. Industrial time moves in progress, improvements and innovations, changes that build on each other toward something, you're not sure what, but definitely something different from what came before. You can imagine futures now that your grandparents couldn't have conceived. Machines that work faster, safer, more efficiently, laws that protect workers better, schools that educate working-class children, maybe even, someday, democracy that includes ordinary people like yourself. These aren't just fantasies, they're reasonable extrapolations from changes you've witnessed personally. If conditions can improve over 2 years, why not over 20? If Parliament can pass the 10 Hours Act, why not laws guaranteeing worker safety, fair wages, decent housing? The physical toll of mill work remains real. Your hearing is permanently damaged. Your lungs carry cotton dust that will never fully clear. Your hands bear scars from countless small accidents. But your mind, your understanding, your capacity for hope, those have grown in ways that compensate for physical losses. You've learned to find beauty in industrial settings, the graceful motion of well-tuned machinery, the satisfaction of perfect thread tension, the camaraderie of skilled workers cooperating on complex tasks. It's not natural beauty, but it's human beauty, the beauty of intelligence applied to difficult problems, of skill developed through practice, of community created through shared purpose. The children in the mills, they're growing up different from their parents, more literate, more aware of the wider world, more willing to question authority, to imagine alternatives, to demand better treatment. They're the first generation raised entirely in industrial environments. And they're developing entirely new ways of thinking about work, society, possibility. Little Catherine Henderson, the arithmetic prodigy, she talks about becoming a teacher with matter-of-fact confidence that would have been impossible for her mother's generation. She simply assumes, that intelligence and effort will be rewarded, that education leads to opportunity, that working-class children can rise in the world. Whether she's right remains to be seen, but her confidence itself represents progress, the belief that things can change, that individuals can shape their own destinies, that tomorrow might be genuinely better than today. As you settle into sleep tonight, after another long shift at the spinning mules, after another small paycheck that represents both hardship and hope, you carry with you these accumulating changes, these signs that the world is moving, slowly but definitely to achieve. Some steam session. Something more humane. The cotton dust still coats everything. The machines still pose daily dangers. The work is still exhausting. The wages still barely adequate. The future still uncertain. But change is happening. Legal protections are increasing, educational opportunities are expanding, technology is improving, communities are strengthening, hope is growing. You're part of something larger than yourself, larger than Quarrybank, larger than the cotton industry. You're part of the great transformation that's reshaping human civilization. The shift from agricultural to industrial society, from tradition to progress, from inherited status to earned achievement. It's painful, this transformation, costly in human terms, disruptive of everything familiar and comforting, but it's also miraculous, the emergence of entirely new possibilities, new forms of wealth, new kinds of knowledge, new ways of organizing human cooperation. Your children, when you have them, will grow up in a world your grandparents couldn't have imagined, a world where ordinary people can read, where laws protect workers, where machines multiply human capabilities, where merit matters more than birth. They'll face new challenges, industrial pollution, urban overcrowding, the psychological stress of rapid change, but they'll also have opportunities, educational possibilities, social mobility, individual freedom that no previous generation could access. The story you're living, the story of industrial transformation, it's still being written. Each day brings new chapters, new characters, new plot developments, and you, tired mill worker with cotton-stained hands and damaged hearing, you're one of the protagonists. Your daily choices, your small acts of courage and kindness, your determination to survive and adapt and hope, they're shaping the story's direction, creating the world your children will inherit. Tonight, as the mill falls silent and the machinery rests, as your breathing gradually slows and your muscles finally relax, you can take satisfaction in knowing that you've played your part, that you've contributed something valuable to the great work of human progress. The cotton will be there tomorrow, as it always is. The machines will start again, as they always do. The work will continue, as it must. But it will be different work, in a different world, moving toward different possibilities. And you'll be different too. A little more experienced, a little more skilled, a little more hopeful about what human beings can accomplish when they work together, even under the most difficult circumstances. Sleep well, industrial pioneer. Rest easy, agent of change. Tomorrow brings new cotton, new chances, new steps toward a more humane world. The future is being born, one shift at a time, one small improvement at a time, one sleeping worker at a time, and you're part of its creation.